Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible. Get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/spookshow. Then go over to morbidlybeautiful.com, as we are now part of the Morbidly Beautiful Podcasting Network.
It has been established that persons who have recently died have been returning to life and committing acts of murder.
Have you checked the children?
I want to play a game. The box. You opened it. We came.
Here.
This is the All-American Spookshow.
Hello and welcome to the latest edition of the All-American Spook Show. I'm Josh, and I'm joined here with Donnie.
Yo.
And the Professor Smoak.
What's up?
Once again, Will could not join us. He's on vacation, spring break, right? It's that time of year where people got stuff going on, so he's on spring break, having a good time. But I think we had a pretty good time here talking about the movie that Smoak nominated for us he's the one he brought to the table, so Smoak, what are we going to be watching today?
Yeah, since we're kind of unofficially making April somewhat of an Evil Dead month, or at the very least Sam Raimi month, or however you want to look at it, it's the Evil Dead 2013 remake, which actually celebrated its 10th anniversary on April 5th.
Yeah, so we're just a little past that anniversary. Another one of our little weird things we keep tripping on, right?
A little weird synchronicity. We did it with Videodrome. We've done it, I don't know, a lot of times.
Yeah.
By accident. Totally by accident.
I
mean, there's been a couple we purposefully tried to hit at a certain time, but a lot of these we just end up, just...
Well, to be completely open and honest, the main reason that we decided, you kind of decided to pick this one and we decided to turn it into a little bit of an Evil Dead theme the last couple of weeks is because the latest movie, Evil Dead Rise, just came out this past weekend, right?
Yes, that's right. We here have not seen it at the time of this episode, but hopefully you guys out there watching this now, some of you I'm sure have seen it. So we will definitely get down to it on the show as well. Yeah, I mean
we don't have the final box office numbers or anything from what it did this past weekend, but hopefully everybody ran out and watched it this weekend. I mean I had heard some pretty good reviews and thoughts on it heading into that, so hopefully that translates in the box office and we get some more Evil Dead, because I think it's even evidenced in this one that we're about to talk about today. This is the one that kind of brought Evil Dead back to life, right? Like this was the thing that brought it back, because up to this point it had pretty much been dormant for 20 years, right?
Yeah, there had been talks going back to shortly after Army of Darkness about, when Sam Raimi going to do another Evil Dead, right? This isn't Sam Raimi's Evil Dead, so to speak, but I mean, it's the remake, and it was given over to a whole nother crew. But yeah, there were talks of like, when is there going to be another Evil Dead sequel or something related to Evil Dead going back years and years, and finally it happened in 2013.
Yeah. So this one really is the reason that we got that series Ash versus Evil Dead, and the reason that we're talking about Evil Dead Rise coming out this past weekend, and hopefully that one leads to more and more of this stuff, right? But like this is the thing that kind of finally brought it back from being cast away. So, but yeah, we'll get into it. But before we dive any deeper, we want to put out, first and foremost, we are a spoiler-filled podcast. So, as we always say, if you're a first-time listener, we appreciate it, but we're going to spoil the hell out of this movie. So if you haven't seen Evil Dead from 2013, I think we all highly encourage you to pause this, go check this movie out, and then come back and listen to our our blow by blow and us, our thoughts, and listen to our talk about it, because otherwise, it's not going to hit the same way listening to us tell you what happens and then you go watch it. So we encourage you to do that. And we also encourage you to go over to aaspookshow.com. That's the center of the Spook Show universe. From there, you can go to our YouTube channel, where there you see Hammer Horror in Order and Grindhouse Gutter every month. And then every other month you get Spook Show Rewind and Video Vortex being our newest one, where we dive deep into the video days. And those can kind of even have like some streaming releases and stuff, because let's face it, like the cheap ass streaming movies these days that come out on Netflix and some other services, that's basically today's new video store, right, Smoke? So I think you can kind of loosely throw those in sometimes.
Oh yeah, that's true. You got the straight to video now, straight to streaming services.
Yeah. There are some weird cases where like something will come out on just like straight to DVD and not stream anywhere, but most of them at least hit like a video on demand service or something like that. So I think you can, that's your new video store is the point. So those kind of count too, but that's the whole premise of that one. It's a cool new series. We encourage you to check that out. You can get there through aaspookshow.com or just go to YouTube and search for All American Spook Show. You'll see us. Also, we encourage you to go over to patreon.com/aaspookshow. Once again, you can get there through the website. And also there's a Linktree link down in the show notes. If you don't feel like trying to find all these things, it's all right there on aaspookshow.com or in that Linktree link down below. But over on Patreon, every month we have Crapster Piece Theater. God almighty. Another good one this month. Except I don't have to be there. Suckers. Caddyshack 2. That's the one we got. And not only is it this month, but it's this Friday. We're finally here. It comes out this Friday, April 28th. Exclusively to patreon.com/aaspookshow. So if you want to hear Donnie and or Smoke or Will, whoever's involved there, not me. But if you want to hear, I don't have to be there. I won. But if you want to hear them yak all over Caddyshack 2, that's the place to do it. So without any further build-up, we'll go ahead and toss to the trailer for Evil Dead.
Please. You have to get me out of here.
Leave this book alone.
No. You don't understand. There was something in the woods. And I think it's in here with us now.
You're all going to die tonight.
I read a passage from that book. I released something evil. Oh my God! Why did you do that?
We're gonna get you, not another peep. Time to go to sleep.
All right, there you go. This is the trailer for Evil Dead. So, boy, this movie, holy shit. Now, I'll ask first. Smoke, I know you've probably definitely have seen this before, but Donnie, had you watched this before this time around?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I saw it. I think it was. I mean, you know what? I can't remember if I saw it like the year that it came out. Pretty sure that I saw it like a year or so later, but I know it was. Yeah, I've seen this before. This was actually the third time I've seen it.
Now, I know for a fact I went to the theater and saw this because I remember distinctly I watched this by myself at the theater. I don't always go by myself, but like I went by myself because my wife, she's not watching this kind of stuff. So I'm like, yeah, I want to see this. So I went and saw it by myself. And I remember sitting there, there was a handful of people in the theater or whatever. And some of the things that happened in this movie, I remember like looking over at people like, God damn, I needed to react with someone, with this, like some of the stuff you see in this, holy shit. But what about you, Smoke? You've seen it before, right?
Yeah, I saw it in the theater as well when it first came out. And then, although I believe this is only the second time I've seen it since then. And, and I mean, I agree with you as far as it was, especially for the time, it was brutal for an R-rated movie. I mean, you wouldn't have got this kind of gore in an R-rated movie in the 80s. I mean, the original Evil Dead 2, and, well, Army of Darkness did come out in an R-rated version, but it was, by that time he was more interested in the humor and aspects than necessarily out-and-out gore. But yeah, the first two were unrated, so this movie would not have been R-rated if it came out in the 80s. It would have had an X or unrated or whatever. So that was cool that they were able to put all that amount of brutality in an R-rated movie. Although I have to be honest, I was disappointed when I first saw it in it being that I've never been most kind to remakes. I'm pretty much, a remake hasn't pretty much come out and like impressed me a lot for me to like it these days. I mean, once you get past the end of the 2000s when they were like everywhere. So yeah, as we go in this episode, I'll let you know whether that changed or not. But yeah, my initial take on this when I first saw it in theater was, yeah, I appreciated the fact that it was gory still, but I wasn't as impressed with the remake aspect of it, I guess. But yeah, we'll see what happens, whether it changed my mind as we get further into the episode.
Well, I want to get to talking about this movie, so let's go ahead and jump through some of the background information here. It debuted March 8th, 2013 at the South by Southwest Film Festival, but it actually wasn't released wide, in various places around the world, but here in the U.S. domestically, until April 5th, 2013. It was produced by TriStar Pictures, Film District, Ghost House Pictures, and distributed by Sony Pictures Releasing. Of course, this is rated R, total runtime of 1 hour and 31 minutes. It had a budget of $17 million, but they made that back and then some, because it went on to gross $97.5 million, which pretty fucking impressive, for this type of movie, I think. Especially with as gory as it is. I mean, it's R, and I think the original cut of this movie got an NC-17 rating, and they had to cut it down a little bit to get it to an R. So, like, for a movie like that to make that kind of money, 10 years ago, I feel that's pretty impressive. Here is the box office, the weekend that it opened. So this is the weekend of April 5th through the 7th, 2013. Number 10, Admission. Number 9, The Call. Number 8, The Host. That was in its second week. Number 7, one of Smoak's favorites, Oz the Great and Powerful.
That's just kind of ironic. Pretty funny that Sam Raimi's somewhat competing with himself.
Yeah.
I mean, to some degree.
Yeah.
In the theaters.
Well, he definitely was, because, I mean, like, he didn't direct this or write it or anything, but this was his baby, and he was a producer on this. So, yeah, he's basically competing against himself. Number 6, Temptation, Confessions of a Marriage Counselor. You got me. Number 5, Olympus Has Fallen. Number 4, this is awesome, the 2013 re-release of Jurassic Park. Number 4 in the box office and made over $18 million more dollars for that poor little small franchise, Jurassic Park. Now, I'm willing to bet you that was probably a 3D re-release, because wasn't that kind of all the rage?
Oh, yeah.
I bet you that's what it was. But either way, yeah, more money for them. Number 3, The Croods. It was in its third week. It was an animated feature. Number 2, one of Donnie's favorites, of course, G.I. Joe Retaliation.
Rough.
And number 1, in its opening week, Evil Dead made $25.7 million in its opening weekend. So obviously it went on to gross, what do we say, $97.5 million. So that means it made roughly, a quarter of that, give or take a few bucks, right there in its opening weekend. But yeah, I remember this one being it was a big deal when this came out, as far as in the horror community. And I think it got the positive reviews and the word of mouth actually helped it, go on to stay in the theaters for a little while, and it made a little bank. So did you guys, have any background information or anything you wanted to point out? Because I didn't dig up as much here, before we get into the cast.
I get a little bit. So 95% of the movie was actually shot in chronological order. The movie as gory and bloody as this is, that certainly makes a difference continuity wise. It was also, speaking of blood, gore, it was reported that the remake, this Evil Dead, used 70,000 gallons of fake blood.
I can believe it, at least for that one scene alone, where it's literally raining blood.
Yeah.
Well, they used 50,000 for that scene, right? Just in the ending scene,
probably
50,000.
Yeah, they said in the original Evil Dead they used about 300 gallons.
Wow,
crazy.
Yeah, comparatively, that's nuts. One thing one thing that I did see when I was looking at some background stuff, there is zero CGI in this movie. This is all practical effects that you're seeing here. And I think, once again, like we always say, practical effects always win with us, right? Like, and you can see, like, I think this will be timeless in that sense. Like, I know it's 10 years old, but 10, 20 more years down the road, this will hold up better than some movies that came out at the same time period that was CGI heavy.
True.
Yeah.
Yep.
When they were originally developing this movie, so it was, I guess when they were, for some reason they didn't have Bruce Campbell in mind as Ash. They had Ashton Kutcher and Marlon Wayans. Like, can you just no.
Now, if you wanted to go somewhat of the comedic route, because Bruce Campbell did, by the time you got to Evil Dead 2 and then Army of Darkness, especially, there was a lot of campy comedy going on. So if you wanted to lean in on that a little bit, I could see it. But I think that's what makes this one so good, is that there is very little comedy or moments of levity in this thing. Very little. It's pretty brutal, from the serious tone of what's going on before it happens, and then once the shit starts to hit the fan, how serious and messed up it is from that point to the end. There's not many like laughing moments in this one compared to the old ones, right?
Yeah, that's true. And also, but talking about Bruce Campbell, like you mentioned, Ashton Kutcher was another person they had in mind. But as far as playing Ash again, Bruce Campbell was the least enthusiastic about doing another Evil Dead movie.
Yeah,
he didn't want to really have anything to do with another one. And Sam Raimi was more pushing toward doing another, and seeing that it had the potential for being remade well in this age that it came out in. And but I guess Bruce Campbell changed his mind by the time we got to Ash versus Evil Dead.
This was directed, and one of the writers on the screenplay was Fede Alvarez. The funny thing is, when you look at his filmography, like, he's got a few other things, right? Obviously, I mean, he's done some shorts, and he did direct Don't Breathe, which I feel was pretty successful back in 2016. But really, has only done like 2. He did a TV show called Calls, 9 episodes of that, and then he directed The Girl in the Spider's Web. That's it. Like, as far as like directing is concerned, since this came out. So, and 1 episode of From Dusk Till Dawn, the series. So, I don't understand exactly why he didn't get more work after this. Like, you would feel like he would, between that and Don't Breathe, unless maybe he's just turned some shit down or had some other stuff that he wanted to do. I don't know, but you would feel like by this point now, 10 years later, his filmography would have been deeper than this. But who knows? Who knows the reasons? But he's actually in production right now on the next Alien movie. Whatever, I think they just listed as Untitled Alien Project. I'm not sure exactly what that's going to be. But the other writer for the screenplay was Rodo. God, I'm going to butcher.
Oh yeah, name. No, let's hear it. Come on.
It sounds like a Star Wars name. Rodo Sayaguas or Sayagas. Rodo Sayagas. Let's go with that. That sounds good. Rodo, if you're out there, my bad, buddy. He went on to do Don't Breathe. He's a producer on that and Don't Breathe 2. Producer on Texas Chainsaw Massacre. He's wrote a few other things. Well, he did the story on Texas Chainsaw Massacre. The one that came out last year. The one that Smoak the one that Smoak loved so much, I don't think he still watched it yet.
No, I haven't.
Yeah. Poor old Rodo. Come on, think of Rodo, Smoak. You got to watch it.
You gotta watch it for Rodo. or Road Dog.
That's that might be the only time that's been said by anyone outside of his family and friends. It stars Jane Levy as Mia, Shiloh Fernandez as David, Lou Taylor Pucci as Eric, Jessica Lucas as Olivia, Elizabeth Blackmore as Natalie. That's pretty much all I got, guys. You got anything else you wanted to speak on before we start talking about the movie itself?
Just one thing I guess I'll mention, because we might not get to it in talking about the movie outside of it. But Sam Raimi's Oldsmobile that he has in every one of his movies, 1973 Delta 88, kind of makes an appearance in this one, but not really. Sort of, he's used it in every one of his movies since the first Evil Dead. Now, there's a scene at the beginning when they're at the cabin and they're sitting on the car talking.
That's it.
That's
right?
sort of an homage. That's not the car though. It's that was a 1974 Delta 88, but
close enough.
But at least they did throw it in there.
Close enough for government work, like we say.
Oh yeah, yeah.
It's intermission, it's intermission. It's intermission, it's intermission. Ice cream, candy, lemonade too. And there's a hot dog waiting for you.
The popcorn's popping and it's ready to go. You know all the great food is stealing the show.
Get up out your seat and get yourself a tasty treat down at the snack bar. Snack bar.
For you, the listeners of the All-American Spook Show podcast, Audible is offering a free audiobook download with a free 30-day trial to give you the opportunity to check out their service. So I hopped on over to audible.com, I typed in Evil Dead. It seems like we've kind of gone down that road before when we did the other two Evil Deads and everything. So I just decided this time to type in Bruce Campbell, even though he's not directly in this movie, as a main character. I actually found a couple things here. If Chins Could Kill, Confessions of a B-movie actor by Bruce Campbell himself, and narrated by him, of course. That was just over 10 hours long, and that looks like it's an Audible exclusive as well. This one's even better, Donnie. This is right up your alley. Make Love the Bruce Campbell Way by Bruce Campbell. And narrated by him. That's over 6 hours. Over 6 hours of listening to Bruce Campbell explain to you how you should make love the Bruce Campbell way.
You know what? I could use that in the video store in the 90s.
Yeah, there you go. He's actually wrote a handful of books. There's a good handful there that I'm seeing. I'll just read one more here. Hail to the Chin. Further Confessions of a B-movie actor by Bruce Campbell and Craig Sanborn. That was also narrated by him, and that was just under 8 hours long. So there's at least a few more, 4 or 5 more that I see here. So I didn't realize that he's wrote this many books. So yeah, if you want to listen to Bruce Campbell himself narrate the story of his life and on other subjects such as making love, head on over to.
I'm sure that's better than reading it yourself. I mean, a lot of times outside of Donnie, the rest of us might like to just read the books, rather than do the audible thing sometimes. But hearing Bruce Campbell read his own book would be pretty damn entertaining.
Yeah, especially about the finer points of making love. So. If that interests you, go to audibletrial.com/spookshow. Again, that's audibletrial.com/spookshow for your free audio book. So I'm going to hop on over to IMDb, and I'm going to scroll down a little bit here and find the plot summary, wherever the fuck it's at. Where are you? There you are. I'm going to click on that and see what pops up. And hey, Donnie, you know what? You've been spared this week. There's a few here, but none of them are the really, really long ones. So our old buddy Huggo didn't write out one here. So let's see. We've got the brief one. 5 friends head to a remote cabin where the discovery of a book of the dead leads them to unwittingly summon up demons living in the nearby woods. Really, that's about all you need, right? But I'm going to read the longest one just because Donnie loves that. And this was submitted by Nick Reganis over on IMDb. A long, challenging rehabilitation weekend awaits young opiate addict Mia, who has one last chance to kick the habit for good in the isolated family cabin in the thick woods. However, as Mia's estranged brother David and his girlfriend Natalie meet up with David's old friends, Olivia and Eric, a hair-raising discovery in the cellar will soon lead to a frantic night of demonic possession and madness. Now, an ancient malevolent force demands blood and the precious souls of the living. Who can stop the ever-growing evil of the encircling forest? Well, Donnie? Where do you want to start, bud?
I mean, as all things, start at the beginning. That hook.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where you see a girl that's been possessed and this group of hillbillies. But, the way they set that up, you figured they'd come back in some manner. There's like some group of hillbillies or local folk, whatever the fuck, witchcraft lovers. I don't know what these people are. They kind of the only way to get rid of her is to fucking burn her up, because that's the only way. At this point, you can't save her. You can just save her soul. So by releasing her, we're going to have to burn her ass up and, she'll be saved. And that's basically what they do. And it's her dad, of all people, that does it. Doesn't he? Not only did he burn her, did he not take a shotgun? I think he took a sawed off or something and
he did.
Blew her head off.
Yeah.
Right there.
Yeah, before he did it, he said, "I love you, baby."
That is the way this movie starts.
Crazy.
Yeah.
What a hook.
You know you're in for some shit.
And
But
as you said, though, too, they don't tie it in. They don't try to tie that back in at any point later in the movie, kind of like they did in the original, where it, where you kind of find out who Henrietta was. And I mean, not that there's a character named Henrietta in this movie, but the book and the original possession gets kind of tied into the storyline. Whereas in here, they just introduce the fact that this went on in the basement of this house. And that's why that you have the Necronomicon and these things hanging in the basement later.
But you would think, like, we've introduced this crew of people that know what's going on, these rednecks, whatever they are, right? That they would come back into play, but you never see them again. So it is kind of weird. But that being said, it's a hell of a cold open. Like, you're in for some shit right away.
It kind of reminds me a little bit of, not that they tried to do this, but it kind of reminds me of The Beyond a little bit. Fulci movie.
Yeah.
The intro to The Beyond, where you had the warlock and stuff going on there, same sort of occult setting.
Where it's enough what the fuck to make you want to keep watching. Like, holy shit. Now you're going to lean in a little bit, if you're into such things. Or if you're not into such things, to get the fuck out right there. Because it's probably not going to be much tamer than that. Like they do reel it in for a little while after that. Like they just kind of punch you right in the nuts and then let you heal up and catch your breath for a little while because, there's like about 20 minutes of character development here where, you got all these friends gathered to help Mia kick her drug habit. But it didn't take too long for them to go down in the damn cellar or whatever. And they find a sawed-off shotgun and the book that you see at the beginning, which, as a Evil Dead fan, it's the Necronomicon, right? It's wrapped like in a black Glad bag or something and wrapped in barbed wire.
Barbed wire? Yeah.
They don't mention the Necronomicon name, though, do they? I was trying to remember I don't think...
It might be in there somewhere, but I mean, like, maybe they didn't.
I don't recall them.
I don't either, but, like, I'm thinking, like, you do have moments, like, towards the end where you hear the recordings of a little bit, right? So maybe somewhere in there the word is mentioned, but I don't think so directly. You might be right. And of course, because there's always got to be one in every crowd, Eric, the resident nerd, however you want to label him. This motherfucker, he opens up the book and reads the book.
Despite the multiple warnings in the book, it's almost like it's not really almost. It kind of reminds me some of the inscriptions of the book. It's like the Sesame Street Grover. There is a monster at the end of this book.
Please stop reading this book.
Oh, there's a monster.
I do like the added, like, this dude went out of his way to read this shit because, like, he had to, like, do the old paper trace deal to get the words, right? Like, he had to put a piece of paper and trace it out with the pencil, whatever the saying, what's the phrase, Smoak, like, kanda, whatever, the chant, right?
Oh, yeah.
The one you always get.
Yeah, the chant.
Yeah.
Don't say it.
Yeah, please. Please, there's a monster at the end of this podcast.
Who in a room by yourself, who reads out loud? I don't think I've ever read anything out loud in a room by myself.
I have when this is random, but you just made me think of it. When I'm reading a book and sometimes I'm reading it and for some reason I get distracted by something. Not like it's noisy or anything, but like I'm in a room by myself reading a book. And then for some reason I'll start thinking about, hey, did I leave the stove on? So your mind starts drifting. So like, I'll start like, all right, fuck, I got to start this paragraph over. I'm going to read it out loud so I can refocus on what I'm reading here. Yeah. So I will do that from time to time, but it's not like I'm sitting around like, you're not going to like, why is Josh just talking to himself and then come in and I'm just sitting there rocking back and forth reading a book by
levitating.
Yeah.
Especially an incantation. You would think maybe an incantation. This guy seems smart enough. I mean, he is, like you said, the resident kind of nerd that knows about some of the, I mean, not that he knows exactly what the book's about, but he's the one that puts a lot of stock in what's going on or what probably went on in the basement. You would think that he wouldn't just blatantly read out loud a incantation.
So Mia, she's spazzing out because she's going through withdrawals. Like she's like hooked to some serious shit, right? Like it's like meth or heroin or something. Like, it's some serious stuff she's trying to break. So she steals the car, plunges it into a swamp, and then she sees this girl out in the woods. Lack of a better description, it's just like a teenage demon, right?
Yeah.
There's a little bit of a cat and mouse. She's running around like freaking out because between the withdrawals and then wrecking the car and seeing this girl out there, she finally gets wrapped up in it's almost like the tree rape scene. They didn't quite go there, right? But it's pretty close. The oft mentioned the original The Evil Dead tree rape scene. But she's wrapped up in the bushes and the trees or whatever, and then this demon girl's in front of her, and she kind of becomes a snake eel type thing, and then just wraps around her leg and goes right up the old Hershey. Well, maybe not the Hershey Highway. I don't know. Maybe the highway that's in front of the Hershey. I don't know. Who knows, right? We don't know where it went, but it definitely went up in there somewheres, right?
Yeah, it's in there.
Like I said,
look,
it's very much an homage to the vine rape scene, even though they didn't use a vine, they used the whatever slimy demon eel.
Yeah, so now she's possessed, right? Like you just put that together. Donnie, I know that was one of your favorite parts, old Grandpa.
You know, what a great name for a dog.
Grandpa.
Great name for a dog.
Now, is that the name when it was a puppy? Or did they change it 10 years later?
I don't know.
This dog's still alive. Fuck it, we're calling him Grandpa.
I love it, but I hate that they killed it.
Yeah, well, I
fucking hate it.
At least you didn't see it happen. I mean,
it's true.
I guess in the end you kind of do, but you don't. Because there's like that brief, because it was her brother. I'm blanking on his name. David.
Yeah,
David is his name. He finds the dog all bloody, and then basically it's dead, right? And then there's like this brief moment where he's like, "Oh shit, how did this happen?" And then he kind of sees his sister Mia like taking a hammer and just beating the dog to death. So I guess the question there is, did it happen, or is he just like, "Oh fuck, Mia's so whacked out, she did this"? What do you think there?
As far as like him kind of piecing together what he.
How did it happen? Is that how it happened, or did it happen in some other? I mean, I guess it doesn't matter in the end. The dog's dead.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, like that little flash sideways, flash forward, backwards, whatever you saw there, was that Mia taking that hammer and just beating the shit out of her?
Relive your childhood trauma, Donnie. Jesus, do we have to do this now?
We got to focus in on old Grandpa.
Shit.
Because
great name for a dog.
When I was watching it though, I thought about you with the.
I know. Yeah, I was like, fuck.
I was like, oh, Donnie's gonna love this.
Fuck. I gotta kill the dog, man.
After that, Mia goes in to take a shower, and she turns the shower up to 155 degrees or whatever the fuck, and gives herself like second and third degree burns. This is pretty gruesome, right, Smoak?
Yeah, you see the obviously very hot water hitting her face, and like the cheek just boiling away, kind of the skin.
Right after this is when like, oh fuck, we got to get to the hospital. So they go to take her, and of course the road is completely. It's not even really a road, because remember they show them on the way in. They're in a Jeep, right, and they go across this creek that's just it's shallow enough to drive across, but there's no bridge or anything. You just drive right across it. Of course they go back, and it's like a fucking roaring river, because it's raining real hard outside. We should mention, but it's like a river. It's flooded out. What'd you think of this difference between the original Evil Deads as far as like? Remember, in those, the demons, whatever the fuck, peel the bridge back. Remember, in the Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2, you see like the bridge like peeled back, like something just grabbed a hold of it and just went and ripped it in half and peeled it up. Instead of doing that, they just did like, well, it's just a roaring river. You ain't getting across it. What do you think of that difference?
Yeah, just went for the more. I guess I love, I love the original, but I mean it was a more fantastical element, I think, with the bridge, torn up. It's supposed to look like a skeletal hand also.
Yeah, like
I think they went the more realistic route as they went through, as this whole movie does. They just sort of get away from the comedy, and they stick with the grueling sort of brutality and everything. So I think that was just another aspect of it, them trying to be less fantastical and more realistic outside of the demon possession.
I was about to say, as realistic as you can get with a demon possession movie, because then you get into the do you believe that this can actually happen conversation, and that's a whole other thing. But I thought it was an interesting spin, but I was just thinking about it as they were coming in, like, oh, there's got to be a bridge somewhere, right? Because the bridge has got to be out. But no, they completely changed that aspect of it. So a lot of this is where really, like, once they go back to the cabin, the fuckery goes from like, all right, there's some weird shit going down to full blown demonic possession, insanity, right? Really, Mia, who is possessed, shoots David in the arm, and then she holds down Olivia. That's another. This is like a Sam Raimi thing, right? Or like, you know, something that they love to do in this type of movie is not only throwing up on somebody, but like holding them down and just yakking in their mouth and in their face, and they just ah!
That's great.
You know, if you think about it, we've seen a lot of this lately with Fight Club, and now this, like a lot of just people being held down and just like all up in the mouth and face and shit. Seen too much of it, but then they just kind of wrestle around with her and throw her down in the cellar, so she's locked up there. Olivia, when she gets possessed, what do you think about that? Where it's like she's going in there to get the medicine, and then she just stops and pisses herself.
I mean, you know, I would imagine, you know, if you're in this state that your body is not your own anymore.
Yeah, no, you're not in control of. At the least, you're not in control of your faculties if you're demonically possessed. So maybe that's the science lesson that we've learned here today, kids. Is that when you get demonically possessed, you might piss all over yourself.
Well, even if you think you might be in a situation where you might want to empty your bowels and your bladder so you don't die. But when you do die, you have dignity of not pissing yourself or shitting yourself. Well, I don't know.
As if pissing yourself, you know, uncontrollably is not bad enough. Then the demon makes you go in there and cut your own tongue out. Break the mirror, right? Isn't that what she did? She broke the mirror or something, and then like took the glass and then fucking cut like half of her mouth open, like Jonah Hex style, and then just fucking like cut her tongue out. And then Eric comes in like and slip. Didn't he slip on the tongue? I think he hits it like, you know, he stooges it on the fucking tongue, and then she comes at him with a needle. By the way, I should mention she's like a nurse in training or some such, right? Like RN, so whatever she is. So she's got all this medical shit, and she's there to help Mia. She jumps up and just fucking stabs the shit out of him in the face with that needle. God damn. It's brutal.
Breaks his glasses, right, with a needle.
Yeah. But he bashes in her skull. Didn't he catch her with the toilet, the tank lid?
Yeah, he broke off the sink or part of the toilet. Something like that. Some piece of porcelain off of one of the toilet things.
Yeah.
Bashed her head in, so she's out of the picture. Mia. A little bit later on.
Imagine.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was like, can you imagine like doing what she did, like Mia, where she cut her?
Well, I mean, like I said, there's a lot of mouth shit here. If you think there's the theme, right? The yakking up blood in somebody's face. Now Olivia fucking fish hooks her mouth and cuts her tongue out. Now Mia comes along with a box cutter and just like cuts her tongue in half. like because whoever she was attacking, I forget. Like they came at her with a box cutter. She knocked that out of her hand, took it, and then just like and cut her tongue in half.
What'd she do?
Well, I think she was laughing when she did it. Like, you know, this doesn't do shit. You know, God, it's just constant. Like, God damn, from here forward, just everything is just fuck. Yeah. Natalie, when she gets possessed, that, by the way, they do the old Ash. Like, my hand went bad, so I got to cut it off with the chainsaw bit. Except her arm starts going bad, so she takes a damn like turkey carving electric knife and cuts her own arm off, like above the elbow, cuts it off. By the way, wasn't that where like they come in like, Natalie, what the fuck have you done? And she turns around and like it's hanging there by like one nerve or something, like and it falls off. God.
I'll say this, man. Now let's back up a little bit. Let's just talk about this electric knife. You probably only use it maybe once or twice a year. And by the time you go to use it again, you forget how to fucking use it. And you're just like, okay, how does this piece together? So like,
you mean it's too convenient for her to like
just
in the moment.
plug it in, turn it on. Yeah, there it goes. Okay.
Okay. Now you get into the question of why the fuck was it there to begin with? This is like a half abandoned cabin where clearly like, transients have been in there and they got to clean everything up. And the first utility that you pull out is the electric carving knife. What are they doing with the carving knife? Like before this happened. It's a good thing we made this whole turkey and brought it up here. Let's carve it up.
Oh, we got one.
Well, it made for a good grit your teeth, holy shit moment, right? At least. Natalie.
Oh, yeah.
Natalie, full possession. She's cut her arm off with an electric knife. Now she shoots herself, David, and Eric with a nail gun. Smoak, this is once again like a goddamn, right?
Yeah.
There's just a lot of that, like you're like, you're chewing your fingernails and you're like fucking grabbing your hands and shit, like everything that happens when the dude, Eric, he's got the needle in his right below his fucking eye, and then he pulls the needle like out. It's like
see his eyelid.
Cringe, man.
Come with it because it's
yes.
Yeah.
They just make you feel everything in this movie.
God Almighty, yeah. I can't do eyes, man. Eyes. It's like, I know this is kind of off topic, but a Clockwork Orange, fuck it. Yeah, the eyes, I can't do it. Oh, I just cringe all the fucking time.
We need to find the perfect movie where dogs get killed and there's a bunch of
shut up.
And there's a bunch of eye mutilation, right? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, next month on the Spook Show, we dive into the movies of Lucio Fulci.
Yeah, the eye shit. Oh yeah, you're right. Next up, Christmas Cruelty. Wouldn't that?
God.
I get, we can see each other, but obviously this is an audio podcast. You can't. I just saw Donnie's eyes like go blank for a second there when we were talking about Christmas Cruelty. You just mentioned it, and he's just like, he goes to some dark place.
God damn.
Who do you think? Everybody catches straight brutal hell in this movie, but do you think anybody catches it as bad as Eric, the nerdy guy?
Honestly, yeah, no. Like he definitely gets the worst, some of the worst of it, but he brought this shit upon himself.
He reminds me of
digging
that.
Around.
Remember when we just watched Evil Dead 2? I believe it was last month, and that redneck guy, that I'm blanking on what his name. That dude gets the shit beat out of him about 5 different ways, and then finally, he gets it. But Eric is this movie's version of that. He's the guy that just. No matter what you do, like they don't quite kill him, eventually you get there, but like they don't ever quite kill the dude, but man, he takes a fucking beating, including Natalie taking a crowbar, smacking him a handful of times and fucked his hand. Like she hit his hand so hard that it split in half, like through the middle. And he's just,
he's what?
And he didn't die. He didn't die. I think if I saw my hand split in half like that, I'd just die. Forget that.
I was like, you know what? Fuck it.
That is not a killing blow, but I'm dead. David comes along and he shoots her other arm off. She does. I just said Eric takes a beating. Natalie takes a pretty good beating here too, because she loses both arms before she finally dies after he shot her other arm off. Eric, the nerdy guy who's taking a licking, he saves David from, like, they're down in the cellar, right? He saves him from Mia? I forget exactly how that played out, but Eric saved him, and then he just I fucked up, and then
I shouldn't have done this.
I shouldn't have read that book, and then just floats away in the cellar. So he's finally dead. David takes Mia, even though she's still alive, and he buries her. Because in the book, one of the ways to get rid of this possessed person is to burn them, right? Like they did at the beginning of the movie, or you need to bury him alive or something. So that's what he's going to do. He puts like a plastic bag over her head and buries her. So basically, I guess she dies, but then he digs her back up and she's back to normal. It revived her because it didn't revive her. He revives her, right? Like she's dead. He digs her back up and then sticks these electrodes, like this little thing that he rigged up with a battery or something.
Yeah.
With 2 needles for the electrode part, I guess.
Yeah.
He had wired. stabs her into the heart with the syringe needles.
Donnie, the question here is, do you think you'd be in this god-awful scenario that's played out up to this point? Do you think you'd have the wherewithal to come up with that scheme that he did? I'm going to bury her. I'm going to fix up this battery with the needles, and I'm going to bring her back to life. Do you think you'd be like, fuck this bitch, boom, done? Right?
That's what I would do.
Yeah, like, this is too much. Like, I'm not.
Nah.
Nobody's coming back from this, so I'm out.
I ain't having it.
Yeah. But no, he has the wherewithal to plan it all out. Like, he's got a whole plan to bring her back. And he actually successfully does it. So it goes back in the cabin. Sure enough, the door shuts before she can get in there. And then Eric, the dude that's, he's stronger than Duracell. Takes a licking, keeps on ticking. Whatever you want to phrase. He's back. He's fucking back. And then he stabs David in the throat. David has enough left to basically shoot a gas can, right? And then somewhat blow the cabin up. It catches on fire. So now that they are done. But Mia, who has been a demon pretty much, 90% of the movie at this point, now she's back to normal, and she's the last survivor. This is where all that 100,000 gallons of blood or whatever you talked about, it literally starts raining blood. I guess because now, this is the last gasp of the demon or whatever. She's the last one there. So if the demon's going to make its way to Earth or whatever the hell's going on here, it's just, all hell breaks loose and it starts raining blood. Mia eventually, this is another one of those grit your teeth type moments. She's running from the demon, who is pretty much, for the most part, throughout this point of the movie, has been like this teenage girl running around in the woods, right? It pushes a Jeep over on her. She gets out of the way for the most part, except her hand gets trapped under the Jeep. She has to pull her own hand off. Because she's pinned on her. To get away, she has to pull her own hand off. This is another one of those Jesus Christ moments. But of course, you can't get through an Evil Dead movie without the chainsaw, right? That's where you're introduced to the chainsaw. And she, there's a struggle with it, and she can't get it started and everything, but finally she does, and then she sticks that chainsaw in that demon teenage girl's face, and then just, it's raining blood spurting everywhere, just this holy shit visual of her, like, sawing this demon in half. So I guess, really at that point, she has defeated the Evil Dead. She's defeated the demon. It kind of zooms back in on the book, the Necronomicon. It closes. Evil Dead credits. That's it. Until you get to the very end. I don't know if you guys watched all the way through the credits. But you get to the very, very end. And right before you get to the very, very end, you start hearing some of the tape, from the original Evil Dead.
The original.
You hear the tape playing. And then Ash appears, side profile, dark, and he looks up and says, groovy. That's it. So, wow.
Do you think that's his seal of approval?
I would think so. I mean, as far as now, look, when we finally get around to watching Evil Dead Rise, I don't know how connected this movie or the original movies or Ash or any of that stuff is to Evil Dead Rise. We'll find out. And really that show, that series, I think it lasted 3 or 4 seasons, Ash versus Evil Dead. I don't know how connected really even that is necessarily to this, because that, I believe, from what I understand of that show, that's more like connected directly to, let's just say, Evil Dead 2. Not like that it directly picks up from there, but it's more connected to that storyline. So, I don't know how connected that is to this. So, really, I guess the question is, do you think they had some other plan to connect this and bring Ash back and everything, and then it just kind of fell to the side and became what it is now, or what?
I don't know. I've seen the trailer for Evil Dead Rise, but I have not read, and that's just also me too. I don't like to read too much into things before I go see them.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I won't know until afterwards anyway, because I don't want to come across how it might be connected yet. So I haven't read anything about that, or as far as any plans that they might have had for connecting Evil Dead Rise to any of the other franchise or not. And I haven't even seen. We own Ash versus Evil Dead, but I haven't even got around to watch that show yet at all. Not even one episode.
I've watched about, if not the whole first season, at least most of it, I believe. It's been a while back. I just never went back to finish watching it. But what I saw of it's pretty good. But it's more in the vein, like I said, of think closer to Evil Dead 2, Army of Darkness type. Because it's Bruce Campbell being Ash. So So it's closer to that than it is anything like this, for sure. Not that that's a bad thing. I'm just saying, if you're looking for the flavor, that's what it's more that than this, for sure. But yeah, I don't know. It would have been interesting to see exactly what they were thinking, what they were going to do past this, or do you just look at this as like kind of a requel, reboot, kind of standalone thing that is just really well done, so I guess, that's left up to however you want to look at it. It's subjective because that's an opinion type of thing. But speaking of which, I guess we'll go ahead and get into opinions. Smoak, you brought this one to the table, so what's your star rating?
And if you recall from the beginning of the show, like I said, when I first saw this in theaters back in 2013, I wasn't all that impressed with it. I was impressed with the gore, for what they could get away with an R-rated movie, and that they actually went that route, and that it was practical and not CG and all that stuff. And I was appreciative of that, but not being a fan of, in general, of remakes, but especially at the time. I've gone back and watched some, as even on the show we've done. Did we do House on a Haunted Hill on the show?
No.
The remake?
We've probably talked about it. But no,
I went back and watched it outside of the show. Yeah. Sometimes I get these confused with that we have, because we're up into coming up on what, I don't know, 100 and how many episodes now?
Well, this is episode 157, so that's a lot.
So, yeah. So sometimes some of the stuff I watch outside of it, just with me and my wife or whatever, I get confused with whether we did that on the show yet or not. So, but some of these I've gone back and rewatched remakes from, say, late 90s and early 2000s. And maybe it's because as we go and progress into where we're at now, remakes, they just get shittier and shittier. So that the ones that were made back in 1990s and 2000s, I like more than I did when I first saw them back then. So maybe that's what it is. I don't know. Maybe I'm just as I get older, I'm just giving them a bit more of a chance. I'm not as, against the idea of a remake as I used to be or whatever. So rewatching this a second time now, though, I'm definitely more forgiving of it. And I liked it much better this time around than I did when I saw it in the theaters. And not to say that I absolutely hated it in the theaters, but it's just, as I said, my mindset on remakes was I just didn't really care for them. And they went a different direction, which is fine. They didn't have Ash or a character playing Ash the same way they did in the original Evil Dead movies. Probably because they wanted to differentiate theirs from that. So it was not having that aspect, the humor and all that, I guess, I just wasn't that kind on the remake, I guess, back then. But nowadays, though, yeah, I love it for the gore was excellent, especially in the uncut version. There was a few more minutes, or maybe not a few more minutes. Some of the scenes were extended, I guess, as far as what I saw, but I don't remember it, not having seen it since 2013. I don't remember what was added or what was not, but I know that some was certainly had to be a little bit gorier than the theatrical cut back then. Again, the practical effects, excellent. If I was going to criticize anything about it, I don't know. It's not a whole lot. We've talked about a little criticism you could give it. Maybe like the beginning scene was a cool setup. It was a cool scene in general. It just didn't necessarily tie in any other way whatsoever. None of the characters, whether it be, like you said, the backwoods people, they didn't show back up like you might expect maybe they would. Or just that whole storyline. Who were these people and why were they? You don't get any of that. Not that it's necessarily that important, but if you were going to give some sort of little criticism, I don't know. Overall, I guess I'd go with, I'm going to land on 3.25, I believe.
Donnie, what do you say?
I'm going to go a little bit more. Everything Smoak said is absolutely 100%. Definitely agree with that. But yeah, it didn't have, much of the, the humor of, what we know the Evil Dead franchise to be. But still, yet it was like I saw it as a love letter to the original. There was, nods, tributes galore, and from the layouts to the designs, the wardrobe, the props, little in nuances like even the little things like the audio splices and the ADR cameos, and that to me was like a tribute to the original. I agree with your assessment of how the beginning doesn't really have anything to do with, that it doesn't correlate. And, you can pick that apart. Practical effects is always gonna, it's always gonna push, bury the needle for me. Gore was excellent. I'm actually gonna go 3.75.
I think it's hard to argue for and against anything either of you have said. That being said, I think the practical effects, like you said, go a long way. and the amount of gore, you're on the edge of your seat. I mean, for most of it, there's some moments, right, like there is in every movie, especially in that first, 15, 20 minutes of the movie where there's some character development. They got to set the scene, right? You got to know who the players are and why they are here and all that shit. So I get that story wise. Other than that, it's pretty much nonstop, just like the other Evil Dead movies are. So then you get into that crossroads of like, do you appreciate the Evil Dead movies and Army of Darkness, the originals, for the comedy aspects with the horror or not? Because that's what you're getting here. You're getting the Evil Dead without comedy, right? So I think that being said, I really appreciate this version of it for what it is, and that they did let us see a version of the Evil Dead without all the funny. Let's take the slapstick out and just fucking go for it, So I got to give a little bump just for that, like, because you've told this story at this point. You've told this story twice before, so now let's tell this story for a third time. How can we make that any different? Well, fuck it. Let's just go for it and take the comedy out. So for that, I think for me, it earns 4 stars. It's great. I've watched it, a handful of times, and I'll watch it a handful of times more. I really enjoyed it, and it's one of my favorite remakes of horror that I've seen. I admittedly haven't seen every remake there's been in horror, but of the ones I've seen, this one's pretty high for me. So I'm going to give it 4 stars. So as we sit here right now, without Will's 2 cents, we're sitting at 3.6 stars out of 5. So that's pretty damn good. I think that fairly jives with what I'm seeing here on the other aggregates. IMDb gets 6.5 out of 10 stars. And then on Metacritic, the Metascore is 57. So, it's a little above half. So I guess that's about right. A little lower than I would expect, but hey, whatever. And over on Rotten Tomatoes, the tomato meter, it gets 63%, and the audience score is almost exactly the same with 64%. So, that's roughly about where we are, maybe a little lower, but, until we get Will's take there. So, yeah, I highly encourage you to go check it out. I think we all do. When you're talking about the differences between quarter stars here, we're not that far apart, right? So I think we all recommend you should, if you like gory movies, if you like the Evil Dead franchise, all those things, we recommend you go check this movie out if you haven't. And hopefully you have, if you've listened to us just spoil the shit out of it, hopefully you've seen it. So there's that. Before we close the Necronomicon this time around, Donnie?
Connections from the crypt.
This ain't your movie, Crypt Keeper.
Yeah.
Beat it.
Yeah. So what we do here at, with the Crypt Connections, I forget what fucking we're doing. No, so, we do, we connect the current movie episode with past Spookshow episodes by cast and crew. So what we've got for the crew wise, obviously Bruce Campbell, he was a producer. Well, let's see. He traces back to the Evil Dead, which the original Evil Dead from 81. He was also in Black Friday, where he was a producer from 2021. And he was also a producer in Evil Dead 2. The other crew connection is actually one of the makeup effects crew members. His Kevin Carter. His specialty is contact lenses, and he did the contact lenses for It Chapter 2, Black Friday from 2021, and Hellraiser Hellseeker. So that's the crew connections for Evil Dead. And the cast, and Josh, you'll probably remember this. Jim McClarty. He was the dad in the original opening scene. He also played Horse in Meatballs from '79. So I had actually looked at. I was like, shit, that sounds familiar. So I looked up Meatballs, and I was like, who the hell is Horse? And turned out to be one of the more athletic kids that, I guess at the end of the movie they're doing their race, and it's one of the more. Yeah,
that's a deep pull. I didn't expect. I mean, I guess I could see you pulling Black Friday because of Bruce Campbell, if nothing else, right? But although he's briefly in this, but yeah, I didn't expect to hear a Meatballs connection. So
there we go.
You never know with the old Crip connection. So there you go. Okay. Will's not here to give us the kill count, but what would be the kill count mean? Because basically everyone dies except Mia, right? So it'd probably be 5 or 6, including the chick at the beginning. Because I think there were 5 others there with her.
Unless you count them being possessed as a separate kill.
I don't think you'd get that deep in the weeds. So you get at least 5 or 6. Which isn't admittedly, this movie isn't a high kill count. This isn't a body count movie. This is a high level of fuck going on here.
High level of fuck.
Yeah, like holy shit, goriness type of, so there's that. But he's not here for the official number, so we'll wait until he gets that to us one of these days. But let's talk about the kill reel.
Highlight kill.
Personally, I think there's only one. I mean, there's some good stuff here, but it's not necessarily about the ways they die. It's the way they get kind of messed up before they actually die. So I think there's only one highlight kill here, and that is the chainsaw to the demon's face at the end of this movie. It's raining blood, for God's sake, and she takes a chainsaw and jabs it into now granted it is a demon, but it's like a teenage girl, right? Jams it into her face and basically cuts her in half with a chainsaw. Blood's just spurting everywhere, raining blood. I don't think, as far as a single death in this movie, it gets much better than that. So that's what I'm going to go with for the highlight kill here. It is some high level, holy shit.
Yeah, and that's an excellent choice.
And that's that moment where you're like, fuck yeah, that's the winning moment, so to speak, too, right? So there's that. So that's where I'm going to leave it. But Smoak?
Gore score.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to come as much of a surprise what my rating is going to be for this one. But this might just be the goriest new, maybe even going all the way back to what we consider new from 2000, certainly of that decade, 2000 to 2000, or 2010 to 2020. Probably the goriest Hollywood made film that we've had on here. Because recently we've had Terrifier 2, or you've had Terrifier, the first one in the past. But those are niche splatter movies made specifically for extreme horror splatter fans. Now you might argue that Evil Dead is also that, but it had a backing behind it. It had millions and millions of dollars going into the budget, and millions and that many millions more of money going into the box office. So when you look at it like that, it's probably is the goriest movie we've done, new film, Hollywood style, came out in the theater release. So, but I'm going to give it a 10. It's full. It deserves a 10. The original one, I believe, without having it right in front of me, I'm pretty sure I probably gave 1 and 2 10s on the gore side, or close to it.
I've got it here. I can go back. Hold on, I just got to find what episode that was. Yeah, I can't believe it. Here, Evil Dead. The original. 121 was the original. The Evil Dead from 1981. You gave that a 10, and then the most recent Evil Dead 2, you gave that a 10. So yeah, right in line.
Yeah. And that's what Evil Dead's about, is gore and splatter. And as we talked about on the show, on this episode, it even leans heavier and, takes away the humor altogether. And when you have that gore, it makes that more hard-hitting, I guess, especially when it's not CG. So thankfully they didn't cop out with the CG stuff,
Yeah.
I think it makes it even, like I said, a bit more brutal when you don't have the humor aspect to it. So, 10. easily 10. Even in the R-rated version, it probably would have still been a 10. Like I said, they had to chop out a little bit to make it to not be NC-17 or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, the only other movie that I now to your what you were saying, the criteria of like the Hollywood produced kind of thing, I think you're definitely right. The only other movie that kind of even comes close, modern so to speak, right, would be when we did back before last summer, Deathgasm. And although that was like an Australian produced type thing too, so like that was kind of an independent, not probably hugely backed by Hollywood. True. So I think that's the closest though, right?
Probably is. Probably is the closest. That, and like I said, at least, the last Terrifier 2 did come out in theaters, but that was sort of a last minute thing that they decided, let's put it out in theaters. And then it did well, considering all things considered. So they extended the theatrical run a little bit. But still, those are still very much independent, niche-made films for a specific audience.
Yeah.
Evil, they tapped into, you got all kind of walks of life of people going to see Evil Dead, including people that probably didn't know what it was and walked out. Probably walked out before it ended, probably walked out after the first scene of the daughter, the possessed daughter's head or her getting burned up by the father and her head getting shot with the shotgun.
Well, they did have like Sony money behind this. Wasn't it Sony that did this or at least distributed it? So like they did have that. And I think they did have a pretty good PR campaign. Hell, you go look for the poster, the main poster for this. It's just like a red poster with her standing there, like her back to you. And then it says, "The most terrifying film you will ever experience." Real big across the top, across her picture. And then real small in the corner, Evil Dead. So like, they really sold like, this is a holy shit type of movie, So I'm sure that brought in a few extra asses, no doubt. But yeah, for now, we've had a little mini run here with Evil Dead, but we're going to be closing up the Necronomicon. We're going to close the book for now. Maybe we'll open it here pretty soon if we can fit in Evil Dead Rise before we start the big summer programming block that's about to go down here at the beginning of it's going to kick off on Memorial Day. We're almost there, but before we get there, next week is our latest cannon fodder. And the way we have things stacked up, honestly, we're still in the decision-making process, but this might be the last cannon fodder for a little while because what we've got planned for this summer, we've kind of loosely decided not to do cannon fodder this summer. So it might be the last one until, say, August or September. It's going to be a little while. So we figured we'd leave you with a good taste in your mouth with one of the higher movies in the canon lower right, Smoke, with Ninja 3, The Domination.
Speaking of possession, yes. Yep. Yeah. Demonic possession.
Yeah, there you go. of a whole different manner.
Indeed, yes. And before, have all three of us, I guess, all three of y'all. I mean, both of y'all. Have y'all seen Ninja 3: The Domination before?
No, I have.
I have not.
I've known about this movie forever, like the nuttiness of it, and I've heard about it, and I've seen. Obviously, you've talked about it before on Library of the Professor and stuff like that, I believe. So it's come up, but I've never sat down and watched it from pillar to post. But I've heard that this is some wackiness. So
yeah, it's the first thing before we end the show or anything, the fact of it being Ninja 3: The Domination. Some people might not realize that. Well, how come y'all didn't do Ninja 1 the whatever or Ninja 2 the whatever? Well, there is no Ninja 1 and 2, so to speak. It's Enter the Ninja from 1981, I believe it was. And there's Revenge of the Ninja from 1983, I believe. And really, there's no tie at all whatsoever to any of those three movies except for the actor Sho Kosugi being in all three of them. So they just decided that, Enter the Ninja doesn't have any tie to Revenge of the Ninja, and neither of them have any ties to Ninja 3: The Domination. They just decided to call it Ninja 3. That's the ridiculousness of canon. I don't know. That would be the most confusing thing ever, I think, for audience at the time going to see this movie. Is like, well, why should I go see it? I haven't seen Ninja 1 or 2 yet.
Well, you can't you really can't say canon without confusing. And that just keeps on keeping on. That's the side subheading every time we talk about these. So hopefully we have Austin Trunick, author of the Canon Film Guide, with his usual spot, the Canon Chronicles with Austin. Hopefully he's there. I mean, we can't ever guarantee it until we get things recorded and get them on the books or everything. But hopefully he's there. And come back next Monday for that. So for Will, who couldn't be with us, Donnie, Professor Smoak, I'm Josh. We are from the All-American Spook Show, and we will talk to you next week for our latest cannon fodder, Ninja 3, The Domination.
And now, folks, it's time to say goodnight. We sincerely appreciate your patronage and hope we've succeeded in bringing you an enjoyable evening of entertainment. Please drive home carefully and come back again soon. Good night.